My name is Carla Brown, and I'm the Director for Partnerships and Operations at the National Peace Corps Association. And today we are holding this webinar in conjunction with two groups. One is the Welcome Corps. Both groups are involved in provision of refugee services in one way or another. The first is Welcome Corps. And the second is, Welcome Corps, and the person who will be really introducing the team is Margie O'Haron. The other person that you will hear from today from the other program is Evelyn Gansglass, and she is a co-chair of the Peace Corps Community for Refugees. She's an RPCV, Returned Peace Corps volunteer who served in the Somalia. Last year, she also did virtual Peace Corps, supporting an NGO in Ethiopia. She's been involved in a variety of activities in terms of her commitment to Peace Corps, to return Peace Corps values and such, including being on the board of the National Peace Corps Association. So I think this is a very rich conversation where we see, our community really being active on our return, and a really interesting program that currently exists from a government perspective. So I don't want to go into a lot so that we have a lot of time for the actual individuals to speak. I'm going to pass it over to Margie, and I hope you enjoy the presentation and get a lot out of it. Over to you, Margie.
Thank you so much, Carla. Appreciate it, and really appreciate Carla. First of all, thanks to you for setting this up. Really looking forward to this conversation and to meeting with all of you wonderful Peace Corps folks to talk about this program that we think is very exciting. And also to thank them for the tech, which was not easy today. So thank you. Let me introduce a few colleagues. I want to make sure there's some really important folks on this call too. I'm going to make sure I introduce everybody. The first is Maddie Smith-Humer, excuse me, Maddie, who is at the National Security Council and working on this issue. Maybe just wave your hand, Maddie. I'll try to run through these quickly. We also have Natalie Moore, who is with the United States Digital Service. She is a former Peace Corps volunteer herself, but also working on Welcome Corps from the US government perspective. And then we have from the State Department, which is the US government owner of the program, we have Rosanna Kim and Jen Carter. Then finally, we have some wonderful colleagues who are involved with nonprofit organizations that have been working very diligently to support Welcome Corps. The first that I will introduce is Jeremy Halderman, who is with the Community Sponsorship Hub, one of the administrators of the program, and then also Chris George, who is with IRIS. Huge thanks to them for joining, and we will turn to them at some points during discussion today as we talk through the different issues around Welcome Corps. Finally, I would like to just give a quick thank you to a few others who have joined the call. We have some folks who are themselves former Peace Corps volunteers, as are many of the speakers that I've already identified, but also have been very involved in mobilizing their communities to sponsor refugees through Welcome Corps. And that's Meredith with HIAS, Krista with Welcome.us, and Aaron with IRIS. Just again, we will, if appropriate, happy to call on these folks to provide some background on their experience mobilizing their communities. So that's a longer intro than I had hoped for, but anyway, really happy to be here. I want to just give a little bit of background. It is, the Welcome Corps program. We're going to provide some more details about the administration of it, but it is part of the United States government's effort to rebuild and strengthen the U.S. refugee program at large. As many of you know, it was at the beginning of this administration, not much left of it. And so there's been a real strong effort to try to rebuild. And it's been hugely successful. We are probably going to resettle 100,000 refugees this year, which has been a ton of work to get the streamlining and process improvements necessary. That's the good news, but partly because of our own success, we now have quite a large number of refugees overseas. We think about 115,000 today who have been approved as refugees and vetted and are ready to come to the United States. But the domestic capacity to those refugees is not sufficient. And so And that's, again, partly like there's been tremendous efforts to rebuild, but we just are not yet at the point where we have the domestic support. Welcome Corps is a program that helps fill that gap. So Welcome Corps, in a nutshell, allows private sponsors, citizens or lawful permanent residents in the United States to sponsor refugees and essentially provide some of the supports that were they to come in through the traditional resettlement approach would be provided by an NGO. So we think this is very exciting. We know that there's been a tremendous interest around the country in supporting newcomers to the United States. This program offers a structured way to do that. And we think it's been like very, very exciting, and hope that you all are like interested in what we'd love to get out of this call is really to engage and have a conversation with you all about how you think you could help mobilize other Peace Corps volunteers to get involved in the program and sponsor refugees. So with that very high level overview, I will turn this over to Jen Carter, who is with the State Department. And since you all also formerly were with the State Department, you will understand that she is with PRM, which is responsible for the Welcome Corps program. And Jen is going to give us a very high level overview of the Welcome Corps program so that you understand essentially how it functions.
Thanks so much, Margie. Thanks everyone for joining. It's really a pleasure to be here with so many great RPCVs. I'm not one myself, but I feel a little left out this week talking to so many wonderful volunteers. So the Welcome Corps really was inspired by America's longstanding history as a beacon of refuge for persecuted people and the spirit of generosity of the American public. It's part of the U.S. refugee admissions program that Margie was just talking about, but it's really a bold innovation that allows everyday Americans to formally participate directly for the first time in refugee resettlement. So kind of as Margie said, very broadly, the program works with groups of 5 or more Americans and lawfully permanent residents, providing practical support and a sense of belonging for a newcomer's first few months in the United States. Sponsors welcome newcomers at the airport, identify initial housing, and assist refugees as they learn English, access benefits, and sign up for healthcare, and seek employment. So all of those tasks you do when you're new somewhere, which I think all of the RPCVs in the room can attest, can be quite overwhelming. Sponsors really hold the hands of refugees while they do all of this work. So to participate in a Welcome Corps sponsor group, sponsors have to be U.S. citizens or lawful permanent residents, be at least 18 years old, and live in or near the same community in the United States. And that's really so that they're providing this kind of warm wraparound service for our newcomers. As part of the application process, sponsors complete training and other requirements, undergo and pass background checks, and raise funds to support the initial resettlement period, which we'll talk about in a minute. For those of you who might have heard of the program before, there are 2 ways that Americans can sponsor refugees. They can either apply to sponsor specific refugees they already know, or what I think is amazing about the program, be matched with refugees they do not know. So as Margie mentioned, given kind of the sheer need overseas of refugees who are already vetted and waiting to travel, we're really focusing on that matching with a stranger today. But there's lots more information available on welcomecorps.org. And I think Evelyn's heard my joke already, but what's nice about this group is I don't have to spell core. You all know how to spell it already. So it's welcomecorps.org. That's our website. Groups can be paired with refugees from around the world, including Afghans, Syrians, Venezuelans, Sudanese, and persecuted religious minorities in Ukraine, Iran, Burma. What's great about the sponsor matching with a stranger is you also can request to be matched with a specific group. You heard Natalie say that she is a RPC informed a group. You can specify a nationality, a language, or a family size preference that you are interested in sponsoring, and the Welcome Corps will help you match that. So I'm going to call her out, a Burkina Faso volunteer interested in sponsoring a Burkinabe family. So we are able to make those kinds of matches through the Welcome Corps. The beauty of the Welcome Corps is that sponsor groups aren't alone in figuring out how to provide all this support. Every group of sponsor is paired with an organization that helps them through the entire process. I think Chris will talk a little bit about this, but the Welcome Corps really is designed to provide sponsors with all the tools and support that they need, even if they've never participated in anything like this before. I'm going to throw one pitch, realizing that we have about 2 days left in this opportunity, but sponsors usually are responsible for raising funds to support the refugees' first 90 days in country. But right now, that fundraising is not necessary because a generous private donor created a fund to cover these costs. So until August 31st, which is Saturday, groups that sign up to participate in Welcome Corps matching can receive a grant to cover the cost of sponsoring a refugee or SIV family they do not already know. So this fund really supports bringing those at the front of the line into the United States because they've already been screened and vetted and gone through the whole US refugee admissions process, and they're just waiting to come to the United States. They're unlikely to be people that sponsored already know. So they really are waiting for someone in the US to sign up to be their sponsor. With that, I will kick it back. Sorry, Bree, I do speak rather quickly. I just saw your note in the chat. Vicki, right now the amount we ask sponsors to raise for refugees is $2,425 per refugee, but that fundraising is spent entirely on the refugee and the refugee family. There's no cost to participate in the Welcome Corps. All of our services are free for sponsors, and the Welcome Corps and U.S. Refugee Admission Program are always free for refugees. So it very much is every dollar goes to help support your refugee family. I'm going to apologize. I don't have the run of show next, so I'm not sure who I'm turning it over to. So I'll turn it back to Margie.
Take it.
Great.
Thank you, Jen. I appreciate it. Just quickly, a couple of follow-ups. Thank you so much, Jen, for that. I want to just make one footnote on the sponsorship fund, which is that it's a private philanthropist that has provided this very generous donation, not us. And so this isn't, we are not really in a position to be able to announce more on this, but we do expect that there will be some continuation of support. What exactly that looks like, we will announce once we have more information on that, but just don't want that to be a deterrent. And then secondly, I just want to emphasize, that we feel this tremendous urgency right now to bring as many refugees to the country as possible through this sponsor a stranger program. And we have political will to bring more refugees into the country. We have refugees who are cleared and vetted and just waiting for support to be able to come. And we have an economy that right now is able to support newcomers. And so this is like sort of a crucial period. And we're really hoping that in the next few months, we can make a success of this and get as many sponsor groups in place to welcome refugees as possible. And so with that little coda, I will turn it over to Maddie, who is going to make some specific asks.
Thanks, Margie. Yeah, so now that you've heard a little bit about the Welcome Corps, and we are more than happy to dive into the details and any questions right after this, we kind of wanted to end with sort of two big requests, or main requests, I should say. The first one is we're asking if you can identify one person in your alumni group, it could be you, who would be a champion for Welcome Corps. So this is someone who might be excited to get the word out about the program and to sort of let other people know about this opportunity to sponsor a refugee. And then second, we're hoping that you might be willing to share information. If you are excited about this program, if you like the program, just share information with your community about the Welcome Corps. And after this call, we're going to share a toolkit, and that toolkit has emails about the Welcome Corps, draft emails, a fact sheet, some sample tweets if you use Twitter/X. Anything that you might want to send or share with your community, we're happy to sort of tailor that, basically just to help get the word out about this program, which is so great, but not enough people know about it yet. So I'm going to stop there and turn it back to Margie. We'd love to answer any and all of your questions. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Maddie. So I do not have the ability to access the chat. So I'm hoping maybe Jen Carter, if you would be willing to read out questions as they come in, that would be great. While we're waiting for some first questions, so I will ask a leading question of Jeremy, perhaps start with Jeremy, and we can always punt to others. But I'm very interested, since we have former Peace Corps volunteers and you are yourself a former Peace Corps volunteer, how you see like the common sort of goals and themes and what it is about Welcome Corps that appeals to you through that, from that lens or that perspective.
So thanks, Margie. So again, my name is Jeremy. I work for the Community Sponsorship Hub, and we're a nonprofit that's leading the consortium of other organizations implementing the Welcome Corps in very close collaboration with the State Department and the White House and other government agencies as well. So I'm going to have Chris and Natalie speak to the very specifics about, being a returned Peace Corps volunteer. I'm going to talk about the perspective. I used to work at the Peace Corps headquarters, and one of the things that I think is really unique about marrying the Welcome Corps with Peace Corps, returned Peace Corps volunteers, is that this is a really unique, it's one of the first and new and really unique opportunities for you all to advance the third goal. And as you all know, both you will have the opportunity to welcome a refugee into your community, but this is also a way that you're actually really able to educate other Americans about what else is going on in the world. And as somebody, and I always tell people this, this may be a very Peace Corps headquarters DC centric view, so please excuse me for that. But this, the Office of the Third Goal, and the third goal is one of the 3 Peace Corps goals. I think that traditionally and historically has gotten a little less attention, and this is a really, really unique opportunity for you all to actually really elevate the Office of the Third Goal and the goals of the third goal for the Peace Corps. So, and with that, I'm going to, so you can get the other side of the perspective, I'm going to turn it over to Chris and then Natalie as well.
Thanks, Jeremy. I too was a Peace Corps volunteer. In fact, there are 3 Peace Corps volunteers in my family. My older sister, my younger sister, and I. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the Sultanate of Oman, 77 to 79. My daughter was a Peace Corps volunteer in Sierra Leone. So I come from a very Peace Corps family. But for the past 19 years or so, I've been involved in refugee resettlement in Connecticut. And we learned fairly early in my tenure that volunteers with training and supervision can do an incredible job of resettling refugees. And they can really do all of the tasks that professional staff carry out. So if you're thinking, oh, this seems like a really heavy lift, I'm not so sure that I want to take on all these responsibilities of welcoming a new family to this country. Well, I won't say it is easy, but it is tasks you have done. Find an apartment, furnish an apartment, stock the kitchen with food, meet people at the airport, connect them to healthcare, enroll kids in school, help them find jobs, help them learn English, help them keep their job. These are things that everyone on the screen has probably done maybe several times over. So it is not, we're not asking you to do something that requires all kinds of professional experience. And then the other good news is that you will be matched, you'll be paired with an experienced refugee resettlement organization to lead you through the application process, to answer your questions, to do troubleshooting if anything comes up, and to make sure that you get answers to all the questions that you might have over the course of this 3-month period. And it is just a minimum period of 3 months. We're asking you in the Welcome Corps program to commit to 90 days of services. And that is what we've seen working with volunteer groups in Connecticut and working with volunteer groups across the country, really a very doable task. We've learned that when you give responsibilities like this to a group of people, they take it seriously, they do a great job, and you get enormous satisfaction out of it. It is an amazing community project. It brings together people from across your community who you might not even know, people from the local churches and mosques and synagogues, Rotary clubs, just people off the street. It is a great way to bring people together. And I think returned Peace Corps volunteers are really the ideal nucleus for a Welcome Corps group.
Okay, can I paraphrase the question that we're getting in the
Sure,
chat?
that would be great.
So it's kind of twofold. One is about just the fundraising itself. Given that folks have quite a lot of other things on their plate and our sponsor fund's unfortunately ending on Saturday, how do we suggest folks tackle the fundraising issue when we're talking to people that might be interested in being sponsors. And then the second half of the question is kind of how is that money spent? Maybe I can tap on Chris and Jeremy to answer kind of what do you use the money for? And then how is any of that shared with the refugee family? I've been answering, but just I think good to ask live as well. Thanks.
Yeah, those are
That's
great. I'm
great.
gonna,
Oh, go ahead, Jeremy, please.
no, Margie, I'll defer to you.
Okay, I was just going to say, I was just going to call on some others for the first question, but I would like to come back to Jeremy for the second half, and Chris also. I know there are some former Peace Corps volunteers and also current sponsors who are also on this call, and so I wanted to see if Natalie or Krista would be willing to jump in and provide a little bit of an answer to that. How fundraising can work, how it has worked, what obstacles you've encountered, and how you've overcome those obstacles. I think that's obviously a very important question.
I'd be happy to share, Margie. Thank you. Chris, thank you for sharing the RPCVs are the nucleus of the group. What better community than returned Peace Corps volunteers to serve as a nucleus? And if I don't have the funds to contribute myself, I'm engaging my community. We can have fundraising kind of events, hosting parties or other fundraising events. But what we found, like in my own personal experience and in working with sponsor groups, is once we make that commitment and boldly tell our community, I've been welcomed to another country. I'm a returned Peace Corps volunteer in Ukraine, and the Ukraine staff there, they found an apartment for me. I still have a blanket that a colleague, purchased for me without my money, so that I was warm in that Ukrainian winter. I remember them showing me, how do you use the stove? Like the bathrooms, in the restaurants are a little different than I'm used to. How do you even use that? And so now it's my chance to pay back what I was given so generously. And so just telling my story about, just as Jeremy said, it's our third pillar of telling the story of how we were welcomed, and now giving that back and bringing in my community who aren't returned Peace Corps volunteers to help them understand how I was welcomed, why people are displaced, and what we can do about it now as a community. Some people, maybe younger folks, don't have the extra funding, but they have the extra time. And then I've got family who, across the country, who might want to get involved in and saw me as a young Peace Corps volunteer and now want to contribute with me to pay back. And they can't do that because they're not in my neighborhood, but they can provide funding for it. So having a GoFundMe resource, and then even those collective in-person events for fundraising, and reaching out to your networks, whether it's through jobs and as Jeremy said, and Chris has said, through local religious centers and civic groups and things like that. We've heard time and time again that people are surprised at the generosity of their own communities. Once you say, I'm committed to supporting a family, people come out in support as well.
Thank you, Krista. That's great. I mean, I think people have used, I think you touched on this, but like things like GoFundMe or, right, there are other tools out there for getting the word out to your communities to do fundraising. And as I said, we expect that there will be some continued funding support that would address most of the monetary requirement, if not all of the monetary requirement. Some of the money that is required for sponsors to contribute can be contributions in kind. So services could be furniture or other kinds of support services that would count towards that 3,000, what will be 3,000 in the new year contribution. Maybe with that, Natalie, I don't know if you want to jump in on that. Otherwise, I will kick it to Jeremy and Chris to talk a little bit more about what happens to the funds that are raised for the refugees.
I'm happy to just share quickly. Hi, everyone. My name is Natalie Moore. I'm also a returned Peace Corps volunteer, Burkina Faso, 2012 to 2014. I also work in the Welcome Corps space, partnering closely with the State Department and Community Sponsorship Hub. But I also am in the process of having two different Welcome Corps sponsor groups, one of which I formed a group using the Return Peace Corps Volunteer of DC Facebook group and sort of asked in there if anyone wanted to join my group. So my most recent group was formed with all Peace Corps volunteers, majority of which I actually did not know. So we all served in different places, and we just met through the process of forming a sponsor group, which has been pretty cool. And I was just going to add, we're a little earlier in our fundraising, so we will have access to the funds given when we applied. And so part of that is the funds come in through GoFundMe, and so we've had to create a GoFundMe that we will then leverage to do further recruiting of fundraising with our friends and family. The amount that we're required to raise, I just wanted to say, is the same amount, right? The like 2,500, a little under, per refugee is the same amount that kind of is allocated for if those refugees were normally going to the resettlement agency. So most of the requirements, the 90-day period, the fundraising pieces, all of those match really what the resettlement agencies are doing for other refugees that are arriving and being resettled through a resettlement agency. So kind of building off of what Chris said with, you help with a bunch of these different activities. We are just able, the cool thing is that as a Return Peace Corps volunteer forming a sponsor group, I'm now able to raise my hand and say, instead of those refugees going to the resettlement agency, I'll actually offer that I can help and do this. And it's really important at a time like now, where if we can raise our hand and say, I'll do this now, it allows them to arrive, sooner than they might if they are waiting a long time potentially to be able to go to a resettlement agency. So just wanted to share that perspective as well. Thanks.
Thanks. If I can jump in just to build on what Natalie said, first to thank Natalie for her service, not only working on making like the Welcome Corps application and all the tech pieces possible. We really couldn't do it without her, and I can't stress how much work she's put into that side of the house for all of you to benefit and make it a better experience. But then to also step up and sponsor is incredible. But just to build on that, so of the just under $2,500, only 60% of it needs to be like a cash fundraising. The rest can be in-kind donations. So if you have furniture that folks can donate or are interested in donating, there's a housing that might be donated or a piece of that's like a reduced rental rate. We can talk about that. That can all be addressed in your application. So I think that's a really important piece, that it doesn't all have to be in cash. So I just wanted to flag that. Thanks.
Thanks. And Jeremy, do you want to touch briefly on the second half of that question, which was what happens to the money?
Yeah, and I'm actually going to let Chris jump in on that. I want to just add one additional thing. So the funding that is available, I know there's been a bunch of questions in the chat around that as well. So the Community Sponsorship Hub does administer the fund overall, and we do understand that it is a pretty tight turnaround now, since the full Welcome Corps application to sponsor somebody you don't know does have to be submitted by 8/31. And as Margie said, we are working with our private philanthropists to determine how much funding will be available overall after 8/31. But just to reiterate, we'd love for you to get your application in by August 30th or August 31st. But after that, there will very likely be availability of funding for 60%. And then, as Jen mentioned, the 40% can be in kind as well. So we're actively working to see how that can continue as well. And then I will also just note that if you are sponsoring somebody that you don't know as well, the stranger to stranger match, you are also eligible to receive up to 30 days in Airbnb credits for housing to help offset those costs as well. So we do want to emphasize that, and the Community Sponsorship Hub also does administer that piece as well. So want to emphasize that both the eligibility of the sponsor fund to help offset the cost, plus the eligibility to help reduce the cost of housing for the first month is also eligible, and you're available for that as well. And I'll turn it over to Chris.
Yeah, thanks. So what is this money for? How is it used? How is it spent? Well, very similar to the way it is spent if a refugee is resettled by one of the 300 or so professional refugee resettlement agencies. Most of it goes toward housing. That is by far the largest piece of a refugee and refugee resettlement organization's budget. And it'll be the largest part of your budget. Now, if you have a member of your group who has an empty apartment they want to donate, that is golden. Jump on it. In fact, I have encouraged groups to form around the availability of apartments. They're so scarce and so valuable. But in most cases, you're going to be renting an apartment. And that's also probably going to determine the size of the family that you're willing to accept. If a member of your group has a free 1 or 2 bedroom apartment, that's terrific, but you're not going to be able to accept a family of 9. And if it's larger, you might be able to accept more. How much money you need to raise is going to partly depend on the rental rates in your community. And we want the refugee family, the individual or the family, to be resettled fairly close to the group members. We've said within a 20-minute drive radius so that you're fairly close to them. But that's how the money is spent. Refugees are eligible for cash assistance from the government. They're eligible for food stamps. They'll all be enrolled in Medicaid. So their expenses for those things will be kept low and will be subsidized partly by these government programs. So again, most of the money is spent on rent.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Sorry, Margie, I was saying
Sorry,
that's just
Jen,
a really important point to foot stomp is that the Welcome Corps is completely free for sponsors and for refugees. We've seen a lot of misinformation in the space, particularly on the refugee side of refugees offering money to people to sponsor them, sponsors offering sponsorship maybe in exchange for some nefarious activities on the refugee side. It's really important to us that you help us where you can nip that information in the bud, that the Welcome Corps is always free for refugees, U.S. resettlements always free for refugees, and the Welcome Corps services are free for sponsors. It's just that fundraising, like Chris said, to directly support the refugees once they arrive. Sorry, that's just a big hot button for me, and I see Chris's hand up.
Yeah, and let me just add one more thing because this is so important. Refugees are eligible to work the moment they set foot in this country. And they'll also have documents, a work authorization. So hopefully with your help, and I've seen sponsor groups of volunteers provide incredible help finding people get jobs. With your help, they will get jobs soon after they arrive and will be able to begin to pay for their rent. Eventually, they'll be financially self-sufficient. And that's, of course, the goal of refugee resettlement, to help these families regain some control over their lives and to become self-sufficient, not to depend on either a refugee agency or a group of volunteers for very long.
I'm not sure if it looks to me like Margie dropped. I'm not sure. But I did want to find out, you've got about another 8 minutes. Whether you wanted to be able to open this up a bit in case there are questions. There have been several in the chat, but there may be people that would prefer to get off mic to ask a question. And I don't know, Jen, if Margie's gone, whether you want to take her place and kind of leading. Am I right? Does
Sure,
anybody?
I don't see her, or Maddie
I
can.
think we had a Wi-Fi issue, unfortunately. So Jen, if you wanted to do that, that would be great.
Sure, I think I'm up to date on the chat. You all are asking great questions, but if somebody wants to raise their hand, happy to have live questions too. If not, I'll ask another leading one to some of our colleagues. What processes and tools did you use to get the word out about the Welcome Corps? And I guess maybe for me too, how can maybe some of the RPCVs on the group that aren't ready to sponsor today help us get more information out about the Welcome Corps? Maybe I'll turn to Chris, Jeremy, or Natalie. Yeah, I think Natalie talked about how she's recruiting in Facebook groups, but if there are other ways. Or Evelyn, great.
Well, I'm jumping ahead, but that's what we're all about, is trying to get the word out about opportunities like that. So I just want to I don't want to interfere with your part of it, but that's exactly what our mission is to get the word out about opportunities. So when I have my time, I'll tell you about that.
Awesome. I would say from my hat, that's also what I do. I'm working on outreach and sponsor mobilization. I would say it's talking to your friends and family about the program. I think posting on Facebook. We had an amazing sponsor group in Raleigh, where the gentleman posted on Nextdoor because he was really interested, but his friends and family weren't quite ready to. So not only did he find 6 new sponsors to sponsor this refugee family, he made 6 new friends in his neighborhood. And so to me, that's such a great story of the power of the program, not just for refugees, but I think Chris said earlier, with rebuilding American communities. So in a time where we're still in the virtual space and can be a little lonely, this could be a great way to meet your new neighbors. And then I think talking to organizations like this, we have a small but mighty Welcome Corps consortium of staff, I think, that are always happy to give briefings. I actually got the chance to meet Evelyn on Sunday at a local Northern Virginia RPCV gathering. So I'm happy to do those. We have staff all over the country, so we can try to meet up with you. But I don't want to take up time for other
Yeah, there's another
questions.
question in the chat, Jen.
Great.
About the 24-25, or what will soon be 3,000 per refugee for their first 90 days. What happens after those 90 days is the question.
Great question. I think you heard Chris talk about this a little bit, so maybe I'll kick it back to him to answer.
Sure. Most groups want to support the refugee or the refugee family for longer than 90 days. The Welcome Corps minimum commitment is for 90 days, just as the minimum size of the group is 5. Most Welcome Corps groups are much larger than 5. There are sponsorship groups in Connecticut that were over 100 during the height of the concern and compassion for refugees during the Syrian crisis and during the Afghan crisis. But the minimum period is 90 days. That's when most of the important registration work for government benefits will happen. When children are registered in school, hopefully someone will start a job within those 90 days. So the bulk of the work and transition, the difficult part, will happen during those 3 months. After that, they'll continue to receive services as any low-income American family will continue to receive services. Hopefully, during those 90 days, you have connected them to a range of organizations that can continue to help them. They might be employment assistance organizations, they might be childcare organizations. Definitely, they'll hopefully be able to navigate their way around the healthcare system, so they won't be needing as much after those 3 months. But if they do need help, there are organizations you've introduced them to who can help them, including maybe a nearby refugee resettlement organization. But we don't want you to depend on them. As it was mentioned at the start of this program, they're pretty overwhelmed and working at capacity, resettling as many refugees as they can. One of the reasons why the Welcome Corps program is so important is it is taking some of the load off of those refugee resettlement organizations. So we don't want you to depend on them too much, but they can go to them after those 90 days if necessary.
So in
Thanks,
this,
Chris.
can
Oh,
I
I'm
just
so
ask
sorry.
you, no, it's okay. I just see, in the last, you have about 3 minutes to go. And I don't know, John, I don't know if we addressed the comment by John Martin regarding the timeline and how fast this takes. I don't know, John, if you want to jump in. You don't have to. I shouldn't put
Yeah,
you on the
no,
spot,
that's fine.
but I
It's
did.
fine. Yeah, I think Chris has been, I talked to Chris about this, and we luckily, we've been working in our program for at least a couple months now. And when the funds became available, we were able to make the end of July. So it's great that now you have a deadline to the end of August. We don't have a family yet, but one of the things I wanted to bring up, our group is mostly returned Peace Corps volunteers. I'm the president of the Connecticut group, but we also have a couple people from Wesleyan University, and so that's the place where we're planning to settle the family that we ultimately get. And I think that's helpful because even though the formal people is just Wesleyan, we're going to have we expect a lot of people or students that are going to be able to help us with on the ground things, right? And Connecticut's a small state, so we don't have a lot of issues in terms of driving distance and so forth. But we're kind of Peace Corps, college students, and I think that's a great combination, and we look forward to working with the Wesleyan group.
Hey, it's Margie joining back by phone. Apologies, having all kinds of network issues. But I wanted to just follow up on a couple of things. One, I know we're almost out of time, so I'm watching the time, Carla, but I guess that comment just brings to mind an important point that I think has been kind of a best practice, which is the idea of having sponsor groups that are multi-generational, right? Because you bring, and and with different backgrounds and different skills. So if you have somebody who worked in the school system, or somebody who's a real estate agent, or somebody who, is affiliated with, what we already brought up the housing issue, but, students who are like super tech savvy, like all those skills will come in handy. And so having a group that has that kind of diversity of background and experience is super helpful. And so just before we wrap up too, I just wanted to see whether there are any questions. I know many of you are leaders of affiliates, and so if there are specific questions that you have about how to mobilize your affiliate group and get others in your affiliate group to participate, would love to continue this conversation with you. I know we're out of time here, but we are happy to have a follow-up call or a series of follow-up calls to further engage on this topic. So that's all. Turn it back to you, Carla.
Well, first of all, I have to say thank you. I think this is a rich conversation, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's the first of many, because RPCVs are humanitarians at heart on some level. With that, I just want to pass it over to Evelyn to give her a chance to really talk about what's being done and how her group has been playing such an important role on this topic.
Thank you. Thank you, Carla. Just to start by saying we are not a competing program. Our mission is exactly what you're trying to do, to inspire and mobilize the Peace Corps community, return volunteers, friends, relatives of Peace Corps volunteers, and to help get them engaged in working in the refugee field. In this country, we also we haven't been doing it recently, but also help connect people to volunteer opportunities overseas. But it is exactly the kind of thing to try to bring all of the unique cross-cultural language and other skills that Peace Corps volunteers have to this issue, to the challenge of resettling refugees in this country. I have to admit that it's kind of embarrassing that you aren't all members of our organization, all of the returned volunteers who've been speaking, and that I hope you'll join us and use the mechanisms that we have, which I'll talk about in a minute, to inspire and mobilize community, the broader community. What we try to do is provide information and connections to volunteer opportunities for individuals as well as to the NPCA affiliate groups, and individual return volunteers working with other groups as well. We do this in a number of ways. We showcase what individual and different affiliate groups do, country of service groups, geographic groups, cause-related groups. We have examples from each of these different types of affiliate groups that are doing things to help refugees. We provide forums for answering questions, just as this, peer exchange, through our website, our monthly newsletter, social media posts, and convenings. This fall, we will begin hosting regular information sharing and problem-solving drop-in conversations, much as NPCA has done with affiliate groups, for anybody who's working on Welcome Corps or any other aspect of refugee resettlement, to just chat with other folks. We haven't scheduled them yet, but you'll get an announcement pretty soon about the schedule for all of those. We also engage volunteers in advocacy activities on behalf of newcomers, and we hope to partner with another set of federal people working on refugee issues to provide more information about opportunities for paid employment in the field, meaning working for refugee agencies and their affiliates throughout the country. if you aren't already on our mailing list, please sign up at Peace Corps Community for Refugees, PCC4, the number, refugees.org. And we'll put you on and get you connected as much as possible. We just recently posted an online guide on welcoming refugees that details a wide range of volunteer activities, from short-term one-shot engagements such as setting up an apartment for a refugee family, collecting food or clothing for a refugee family, to much more in-depth, longer-term activities such as sponsoring a family through Welcome Corps or through other partnership opportunities provided by refugee agencies. I, for one, have been involved in the Maryland suburbs for the last 8 years in working with the Lutheran Social Services and doing much the same thing that you folks have been talking about for Welcome Corps. All of the activities that we talk about in this or write about in this guide are relevant to Welcome Corps. So, you know, what do you do about tutoring? What do you do about connecting people to benefits? What are some of the issues related to housing? So we go through all of these kinds of things. We hope to build on this guide by providing more information about what the Peace Corps community itself is doing. We have some examples of it, but we really want to include more. And within this guide and in other places, we're asking you to contact us and let us know. For example, the Connecticut group. We'd love to highlight what you're doing with other groups. Our first online convening this fall will be on September 26th at 8 o'clock Eastern. And we'll talk about specific ways in which you can volunteer. And we will feature Jason Chrislip with Switchboard. Switchboard is a national one-stop shop of technical assistance resources related to newcomer experience. I have to say there are a whole series of wonderful organizations, and we've tried to list as many of those and provide links in this guide. The schedule of other convenings through the end of the year is posted on our website, and we'll be disseminating all of this information through NPCA. In the fall, we also hope to be announcing a mini grant program. I'm sure not as generous as what you have been talking about for Welcome Corps, but small grants to help community members get started in serving refugees. So if any of this seems interesting to you, we'd love to have you join our team. We welcome all volunteers, and we're especially in need of help with website and data management from somebody who really knows how to manage website and data management expertise. We'd also love to hear from all of you. Please email us at info@peacecorpscommunity.for-refugees.org. And if you're interested in volunteering with us or just connecting with us in general. So thank you for the opportunity to talk about this a little bit. Are there any questions, comments, anything?
This is John from Connecticut again. It's so great that you have all this other information. I mean, we've been like information overload, but it's better to have that than it is to be, you know, kind of looking for it. But, you know, at least in Connecticut, you know, we've had such good support from, you know, both our organization and the New Haven organization down as well. So great to have your resources as well. So I look forward to seeing that.
Just to say in the guide, because Welcome Corps is nationwide, but as was mentioned, there are designated refugee agencies that have been assigned different locations in the country. And so there's a map, actually one produced by the federal government, that shows all of that. And then we provide links to that. And then through them, links to all of the local providers. It's hard to do it sitting in one place, but to the extent that we were able to do it, we try to, in 1 or 2 clicks, get you to who's actually doing the work at the local level. So hopefully that's helpful, and the more information we can bring in, we can feed back out to others as well.
If there are no more questions for Evelyn, there are two things I'd like to do. One, there was a question, Margie or Jen in the chat. I don't know who would like to take that. I'm sorry, I didn't have it right in front of me,
I'm
but
gonna
I
tap on Jeremy to answer this one. In filling
Okay.
out the Welcome Core application, how exact must some answers be? For example, facility address for health services. Jeremy is our application guru.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a really good question. So all the applications to go through the community sponsorship hub, and we really do take a holistic look. At the end of the day, any sponsor group that's applying to sponsor a refugee is at the end of the day, we want to make sure that you are like the group is in it for the right reasons, is done the work to make sure that they're going to be really, really well prepared. Actually, as Chris articulated really well when he was talking, is that this is really rewarding and it's work, right? And it's not the easiest thing you'll ever do, but it may be one of the most rewarding things you'll ever do. So that's really what it is about. It's a little bit of a long answer. Look, at the end of the day, if you have the address wrong, it's not going to impact your application at all. It's really about just making sure that you understand the basics, understand what it's going to go into it, and to make sure you've done some of the research in advance to make sure that you're really prepared to welcome. So that's a long answer to saying you don't have to have the exact address for the health facility.
Thank you. So I would like to take, I know we've got about 5 minutes, but just to kind of give a little bit of a summary and overview to nod to both of these programs who are doing something that is so critical for a community. And I think it is clear, as we've all heard, there is synergy there, and there are a lot of like-minded people on this call, and the network is quite rich. So I hope that this is creating an opportunity for more cross-fertilization, opportunities for networking, for more discussions on how to work together, and essentially to support more individuals. Evelyn has said several times, her group is a leader in this. There are other groups that are also involved, although their title may not be specific, right? We do have other groups that this is part of their mission. So there is a role, I would venture to say, that can be played, that can be supportive, and we're always looking for ways to do that as an RPCV community. I say that to say that NPCA, the National Peace Corps Association, is about supporting groups. It's about advocating and helping these groups to become stronger in their mission. That's our role, which is why it was so important from my perspective for Evelyn to be here to represent a group who this is what they're about, right? And for you, just like we visually have seen you as individuals who are committed to a cause, you now see the leader or co-leader of a group who's committed to a cause. National Peace Corps Association, our role is to make sure we get the word out. And so I don't know, you might have the email, our web address, Oren, but please, for those of you who are RPCVs on the call who have not joined the National Peace Corps Association, I encourage you to do that as well, because we do represent the collective voice of a certain set of values. So I would be remiss if I got off the call without mentioning that. And really to just applaud everyone here to be so committed to something that's so essential to the identity of, I'll go so far as to say American values. So would like to make sure there's last words from Margie, last words from Evelyn. Really looking forward to see where this kind of relationship can go. So I'll pass to you, Margie, and then to Evelyn.
Thank you so much, Carla. And just want to really thank you again for the opportunity to speak to you all. This has been a terrific conversation, and it's so inspiring to hear everything that you all are already doing in this space and to work on welcoming refugees. So thank you for that. And then just finally, we'll say, please do reach out. Carla has ability to contact all of us. And so happy to schedule, as we said, follow on, and we will be sending out through Carla a packet of additional information with some additional communication, some documents that will help. Oh my gosh, I'm garbling here. Some documents that we will hope will help with your follow-on communication with your affiliate groups. I'm sorry. And so, but really, really hoping that we can continue this conversation and look forward to working with all of you on this.
Thank you. Evelyn?
Similar comment. I would love to stay in touch with all of you. I don't know, Jen, since you and I met, maybe you could become the contact for me to get everybody's name who's been on, and to just figure out a way to provide information on an ongoing basis and opportunities for these discussions. You know, when we start setting up the call-ins, the regular, you know, call-ins every couple of weeks, we'd love to have you know, somebody from the local level, whether it's John or Chris or anybody else, take part in that, share information. As I say, you know, I've been working, the group that is not affiliated with Peace Corps, but I have to say, I think 3 or 4 of the main drivers of this group that I've been working with for all these years have in fact been Peace Corps volunteers. So they come in many guises in many organizations. So thank you.
Yep. So again, I want to thank everyone for your time. We are at the top of the hour. We want to respect everyone's time. I don't know how to close it other than say I really appreciate the time that was spent. This was an hour very well spent. So thank you all so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Thanks, Carla. Thanks, Evelyn. Bye.